Welcome to Keto Meals and Recipes.com. Today I'm going to share with you my very easy one-pot meal, and the recipe for today is a creamy ground beef stroganoff. This is a simplified and very cost-effective, in other words, budget-friendly recipe that your whole family will love. And how would I describe the taste? Well, my creamy ground beef stroganoff recipe is lightly seasoned and well-balanced, with a rich creamy sauce and lots of meat. And a really great thing about this recipe is that it can also be made as a great prep ahead meal or a freezer meal. So please watch the entire video for all the instructions, cooking and freezing tips, and a bonus video which I will tell you verbally on how to make my easy vegetable side dish, the one that goes perfectly with the stroganoff to complete a nutritious, hearty, and satisfying meal. I'd also like to mention that if you like my instructional recipe videos, I would be honored if you would press the like button, share this recipe, subscribe if you haven't done so already, and if you have, please check to make sure that you're still subscribed, because I don't know what's happening on YouTube, but a lot of people are saying they're not receiving their notifications. Now let's focus back on this recipe. The macronutrient ratio for this creamy ground beef stroganoff recipe is 5:1. With 7.5 grams of total carbs, 2 grams of dietary fiber, resulting in only 5.5 grams of net carbs per 190 gram serving. As always, I always begin my recipes by gathering up all of my ingredients. This ensures that I have everything on hand and that I can complete the recipe. As I mentioned earlier, this recipe can be cooked as a one-pot meal using either a deep-sided skillet, a Dutch oven, or as I'm doing here, a flat-bottomed wok. Whichever pan you're using, just place it on your stovetop and set over medium heat. To my wok, I'm first adding the oil and 2 tablespoons of unsalted butter. When the butter has melted and is sizzling, swish the butter around your pan to coat both the bottom and the sides. Then just drop in your sliced mushrooms. Then, using a spatula, spread the mushrooms around to distribute them in a single layer. Spreading the mushrooms in a flat layer like this will help to cook the mushrooms more evenly. And while my mushrooms are sautéing, I would like to mention that you should always cut your mushrooms, or whatever vegetable you're using, into even slices, because when they're cut evenly, they will cook at the same rate. I have noticed that the underside of the mushrooms are starting to get nice and golden, so it's time to flip them over. Having done that, just continue cooking until both sides are nice and dark golden brown. The browning of the mushroom should take you about 5 to 7 minutes. Then use a slotted spatula to scoop out the mushrooms and set them aside for a moment. Now that your wok or skillet is empty, add 2 tablespoons of unsalted butter. Give it a moment, and when the butter is sizzling, toss in your chopped onions, the carrots which I grated using the large holes on my box grater. I also toss in the grated garlic, and lastly season with a sprinkle of salt, black pepper, coriander powder, and smoked paprika. Then toss well to incorporate all the seasoning and continue cooking for about 2 minutes. At which point you simply pour in your beef or chicken stock. You can use either, but I do prefer the taste of the beef stock with this recipe. Next, pour in 1½ cups of the heavy cream and stir until everything is well combined. I like my stroganoff to be on the thick side, so I'm going to sprinkle a bit of glucomannan powder, also known as konjac root powder, over the sauce and then quickly stir in to combine. Now it's time to put the sautéed mushrooms back into the pot. Toss well to combine and cook for 1 to 2 minutes. This is all there is to making the sauce portion, so just pour it into a large mixing bowl. Now to the same skillet or wok, add the last tablespoon of unsalted butter. Now it's time to drop in the lean ground beef. And as you're putting your ground beef into the pot, I would recommend that you break the clumps of beef as you add it into your skillet. We want a nice smooth stroganoff. Then use your spatula to further break apart any large clumps of ground beef that are in your skillet. At this point, leave the meat alone and cook until the underside of the meat has been browned. Then again, using your spatula, flip the meat over and brown the other side. Once all of your meat has been browned, you want to cook it all the way through, so just toss and stir for a few more minutes until your meat is really well done. And now we're almost done. So the last step is to pour the mushroom sauce back into the skillet or wok and stir well. And for some extra flavor, sprinkle your chopped cilantro over the stroganoff, but do reserve a little bit of your cilantro to use as a garnish. And then just toss and stir until everything is well combined. And at this point, I'm going to add just a little bit more of my heavy cream. Stir and cook for 5 more minutes. This will allow for the cream to be cooked so it won't taste like raw cream, and for all the flavors to blend really well. And because everybody likes a different amount of seasoning, especially salt, take a wee taste and make sure that you have added enough salt to your taste. I like the flavor as it is, so I'm not going to add any more salt. But I am going to transfer the stroganoff into my serving bowl. And at this point, I'm going to use my reserved cilantro to sprinkle on top as garnish. This looks so delicious. And oh my gosh, I wish you were here to also smell how good this smells. The stroganoff is really good on its own, but when I'm making a whole meal, I like to add a vegetable side dish. One of my preferred side dishes for the stroganoff is a very easy 2-ingredient grated rice zucchini, which I sauteed in unsalted butter. And that's because you want to keep the side dish very simple and plain. You don't want it to compete with the really delicate, wonderful flavor of the stroganoff. And you don't want your side dish to overpower the main course. If you're serving for just 1 or 2 or a small family, you may have leftovers. And any leftover stroganoff that you do have can be stored in an airtight container in your refrigerator for up to 3 to 5 days. Alternatively, you could also freeze the leftovers by placing them in an airtight, freezer-safe container where this stroganoff will keep for several months. One thing I would like to mention is that this sauce will thicken in the fridge as it gets colder. However, when you thaw it or want to warm it up, all you have to do is add a little bit of water to the sauce as you're heating it up to get it back to a nice consistency. There's several things I really like about this ground beef stroganoff recipe. Of course, as all my recipes are, it's keto and gluten-free. It's really quite easy to make, and there's not much prep, so you can make the entire recipe in about 30 minutes. And the best part, it's really budget friendly. I hope that you have found this recipe to be one you can add to your keto or low-carb gluten-free lifestyle. Thank you very much for watching my video, especially if you made it all the way to the end. If you have a moment, drop me a comment or tell me how you are doing on your keto diet. Or even if you just want to say hi. I love corresponding with all of my viewers. Please come back when I post my next recipe, and until next time, I hope you have a wonderful and happy day. Cheers!